Up next, we're going to have this city spotlights highlighting Kansas City, Missouri, Overland Park, Kansas, and Claremore, Oklahoma. I won't say too much, but these are some of those early innovators that Matthew was talking about. And so this is a really great opportunity to get to hear in practice what this has looked like for each of them. They're each at a little bit of a different stage in the process of getting these plans implemented. So we are going to kick it off with Uday Manepalli from Kansas City, Missouri.
Good afternoon. Hope everyone can hear me well. A quick background about me. If you have asked me 2 months ago, hey, talk to me about housing, I would have said, I don't know, what are you talking about? I would just go and hire a contractor and he would apply for a permit and then the house gets built. And the reason for that is I was in infrastructure development, but never into housing. So I was more on the public works side, streets, sidewalks, and that. So things have changed in the last 6 weeks, and now I'm in the city planning and development. A major change. And as soon as I started with city planning and development, one of the topics which is very prevalent is housing, development and housing. And I had a conversation with one of my friends recently. And that's where I was like, okay, we have a lot of work to do, especially when you are looking at our counterparts in Overland Park and all. But having said that, we have started that work. I wouldn't say we are the innovators, but we are there as an early adopters. So for me, thinking about housing is one piece, but it goes back to why we are doing this. And most of us like, yes, I want to have a home at some point. And going back for personal history, my family never had a home for maybe 30 years. So the first home which we got was 9 years ago. So it made a major impact in my life and my family's life. If I am feeling that way, there are thousands of people who feel the same. And I'm really grateful for the city where I work for. There are five major goals which the city wants to adopt, and one of them is housing and healthy communities. And when we dig a little bit deeper into the healthy and housing communities, our goals are to make them sustainable, making sure the planning and permitting process is cut down. We are trying to remove barriers, and most of you are from Kansas City. We have a huge city. It's 314 square miles. We have a lot of diversity. So we have to make sure everyone has the ability to do what they need to do. And also make them quality and accessible. So those are the city's goals. So affordable housing as well as pre-approved housing would be part of that city's goals. And that's the direction we are going as a city. I was fortunate because the program already kicked off when I started with the planning department. And our portfolio is very limited at this point. But the goal is not to have a big variety of it, but mostly the use of it. So you can see our team looked at this and said, hey, there are 7 of them which we should start with and then probably need to expand. The ones in greens are the ones which are approved as of today, and there are 4 more which we are in the process of approving. And these were recently approved. We partnered with Draw Architecture, and they were very good to work with. Where we are, well, as I said, we have 3 approved. We have 4 more that needs to be approved. We are at a point where we're working on our website, where we are going to make it available, so you can download it, see how it works. I actually like the idea of how Overland Park is tying it to the parcels, so maybe that's something we will look into. And then a parcel is available, you have the plan. So I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm looking at, okay, what other things we need? So we have to make sure your foundation is there, your trades are there. So that's the process we are going to look at. We are really pushing to get this adopted in late winter, early spring, and we are also looking at expanding the portfolio. And I'll hand it over to Leslie.
Thank you. I'm Leslie Karr. I'm the planning director for the City of Overland Park. Before that, when our program started, I was the current planning manager. I think a really important part of our process has really been the timeline, so I want to spend most of my time kind of going over what our process has been. We started back in 2018, was the first time the community really brought to the foreground that there was a need for housing and a need for housing of different types. In Overland Park, we build a lot of very large apartment complexes, and we build very large single-family houses. Our average is 5,000 square feet, so we don't get a lot in between. So the community had identified that, and we started thinking about what can we do to try to get that kind of housing built in the community. And that's when we connected with the Incremental Development Alliance, and Matthew was part of the team that we worked with, and out of that we really came away with a roadmap of things that we could do to try to address some of the housing issues. And so we started thinking about that. One of the ideas was pre-approved plans. And right as we wrapped that project up, of course, COVID happened, but we also had a project walk in the door, someone we had no knowledge of, we hadn't really communicated with. They had a triplex plan that the neighbors absolutely hated. It was not being well received at all. And we were concerned because we've just gone through this wonderful effort. We've had a lot of community outreach. We have a lot of community support for infill housing. And we didn't want the first project to be a failure and for people to say this is why we shouldn't do it. So the city, with the agreement of the developer, we hired an architect. And we brought the architect, the developer, and the neighbors together, and they started talking about what was important to the neighborhood, what would be possible for the developer to do. And we changed what was a triplex plan to a duplex plan, and ultimately the neighbors supported that. So it proved to us what we already knew, which is that scale and design matter. And so from that, we started thinking about what the next steps could be. The other thing that project did was help us develop an infill street standard. So we were able to have a narrower right-of-way, narrower streets, work with our utility partners to figure out how we could make those kinds of smaller streets happen. So from that, we reached back out to Matthew at Pattern Zone Inc., and we started developing our pre-approved housing plans. And the initial idea was that we were going to apply those to a very small section of the city, and we would kind of try it out in that fashion. And as we're realizing our concept, we're watching a neighboring community have a very heated debate about things like ADUs and smaller scale housing, and we were starting to get very nervous that if we went out to rezone property, we were going to fail. So we stepped back and said, maybe we just need to make these available on any legal lot in the city, and that way we're not rezoning, we're not doing anything different, we're just saying, here's an option that you can consider. We're also getting ready to kick off an update to our comprehensive plan, and we thought that would be another opportunity for us to gut check the community and make sure that this is something the community wants to see happen. And so Aaron Oleg, who's here, led that project for us, and we were very successful in getting the community to again say, yes, we want more housing, different types of housing, infill housing. And so it really gave us our charge to keep moving forward. So in November, we kicked off our program. It is available for free. It applies to any legal lot in Overland Park. So any lot you have, you can use our plans and you can apply for a permit. We do have plans to add in some zoning incentives. So we'll be going to our Planning Commission in March with a proposal for a zoning tool that kind of says, what is the marketability? Because Matthew's right, we've tried things to encourage infill and things don't happen, or we get a proposal and we look at it like, well, you need all these variances to make that happen. And then our council gets worried, why can't they meet the rules? Like maybe we shouldn't do this project. So we're trying to put our toe in the water and find out what does the market need in order to do those projects. So what we have is a portfolio of 25 pre-review plans. We have single-family duplex, and we do have a detached garage. They're all downloadable. We have 1 and 2 story plans. We have 1, 2, and 3 bedroom home plans. They range in size from 600 to 2,200 square feet. So we feel like we have a little bit of something for everyone. They do require additional detail, so our naming of portfolio homes was very deliberate. Our code official was very concerned that if we called these permit ready, that would give the wrong impression, because there is some work that has to be done. Someone would need to work with a professional to get some of their building items together. So this is just a sample of the plans. As Matthew said, you can go out to the website and you can see all of them. And it really is a fairly simple process. Someone goes to the website, you enter your parcel, shows you what's available, you pick out your plan and download it. It's licensed to you for your parcel, and then you can go work with a builder, get those worksheets together, get your plot plan just like you would a normal construction, and then apply for your permit, and we would complete our city review at that point in time. So we just started in November. We've not yet had any permits issued, but we've had a lot of interest. We're excited to see what our zoning pilot project will bring in the door. So this is our website. The incremental development report that was done is also on our website. Matthew did a couple of lectures for us when he was there, and those are also still available there. So thank you very much. And I'm going to turn over to Kyle.
Good afternoon. It's always great to be in the presence of like-minded professionals. My name is Kyle Clifton. I'm the Director of Planning at the City of Claremore. And while our story is not much different than any of the other stories that have been told today, I will say that it is powerful in that we basically went through a complete renaissance in Claremore, in that we moved away from a very antiquated Euclidean zoning and went to a hybrid form-based code with a pre-approved building program. So we'll talk a little bit about that today. So one of the things that I always try to start off with is I try to start off with a little bit of the history, much like Leslie did. And ours goes a little bit deeper, but we started in 2015, and one of the reasons why this whole process kind of came about was we had conducted a housing study in 2015, and one of the things that we realized from the housing study is we had an economics issue. It was a supply and demand conversation. We had an unusual high demand in Claremore and a relatively low level of output. And part of that was land availability was one issue, but the other was the regulatory mechanisms that the city had used in order to approve building permits. It was quite punitive. We did not allow ADUs. There was a lot of antagonistic attitude towards duplexes. And so we had to figure out a way to try to mitigate some of that in order to actually increase our housing stock. So as we walked into that, we started a comprehensive plan process in 2017. That process was really to try to create a cohesive vision within the community. And from that vision, we really started to hear this resounding theme that we've got to invest in housing. If we're going to grow, we've got to invest in housing. Claremore is a little bit of a bedroom community, I guess you could say. We're about 20 minutes northeast of Tulsa. So we were definitely really close to the Tulsa MSA. So we knew that in order for us to grow, we had to start investing into housing. In basically 2019, we basically kind of did a two-part approval. We did the comprehensive plan just kind of by itself in March of 2019, and then in June of 2019 is when we rolled out our special districts plan. But as is the case with most plans, once we actually had the plan in place, we were still fighting against this antiquated code, right? So we had to start looking at the code. We had to start figuring out ways that we could revamp the code. So we started that process in basically 2020, and basically over the course of about 2 years, completely rewrote our code. And through that process, obviously, we developed a pre-development program as well. So while the program itself really launched at the end of 2021, I was actually talking to Uday about this before the meeting. It was more of a soft launch. We were coming out of COVID. Construction prices were soaring. Interest rates were terrible. So people were just not doing a whole lot of construction. And that wasn't just Claremore. That wasn't a Claremore exclusive problem. It was also impacting Tulsa as well. So really, we didn't really jump into this really head first until really 2023. But again, we ended up jumping into that in 23. We ended up doing a second housing study at that time, and that particular housing study basically helped us align ourselves in terms of what plans we needed to put together for our 2.0 rollout. So this is just a snapshot of our portfolio. We started out, at least with our Gen 1 program. There were 5 core plans. And obviously within those 5 core plans, there were 10 building variation choices. So from a typology perspective, we had single family, we had cottages, we had duplexes, we had ADUs for the first time in our history. And then we also put together an 8-unit walk-up. And the reason why I put the asterisk on this slide is while the 8-unit walk-up is technically a pre-approved plan, there are some additional fire code requirements that could come into play in Oklahoma depending on the site that is selected. So while it is largely pre-approved, there may be an additional review process that is required in order to actually obtain the permit. Then, of course, the Gen 2 that we just recently rolled out added an additional 24 offerings that expanded each one of the typologies that was already available in the 1.0. And then in addition to that, we actually rolled out townhouses as well. All right. The formatting always gets me on these slides, just like it jumbles in. So you guys are looking at these numbers. There's some communities out here that are probably like, yeah, we build for 3 times that. I get it. The numbers are not really what I'm trying to convey per se. Really what I'm trying to tell, and really the story of this slide is the output that we're getting with the pattern zones in terms of price per square foot, not only on the construction side, but also on the actual cost to consumer, the market side, are very comparable. And they're very comparable to the regional and national builders that are already building in Claremore. So the reason why that is significant, at least to us, is when you compare the level of quality between the two, there really is no comparison. In all of our pattern zone structures, you're going to get things like walk-in showers that are fully tiled, walk-in closets, hardwood floors, tile, custom cabinets. In fact, one of our structures, I have a picture of it later on in the slide deck here, but one of our structures, the builder just felt in his heart that he wanted to do something Scandinavian, and I thought, okay, that means IKEA. No, he literally ordered cabinets from Sweden and had them sent over. So it's a marvelous structure for sure. But I wanted to just point this out again, not so much to get caught up on the numbers. I wanted to just show that in comparison, Matt touched a little bit about the affordability, and we have seen an affordability component of this equation. And it is definitely in line with what we're seeing with some of the regional and national builders in Claremore. So here's some local examples. So we've got the double cottage. This is a very interesting structure. It can flex a little bit. It can be a single unit structure. It can also go to a 1/1 duplex as well. The cab forward, that's another really interesting structure. It can be a single family variant, which is actually what you see in the picture, but there is also an option to change basically that front bedroom to an office. And so it will swap out the bay window for a secondary point of egress, and it allows someone to function with a home occupation in the front side of their home. The flex house there, this one, I actually have 2 of these to show. This particular one, you can see the staircase kind of sitting over there on the left-hand side. This is a 1/1 duplex with detached garages. A couple more structures here. We've got the Elias. The Elias is unique in that obviously a lot of the structures, as you can see, there's not a whole lot of garage. You're not seeing a whole lot of garage. With the exception of the flex house, of course, it was recessed back, and it's not necessarily the most prominent feature of the structure. But the reason for that is we were trying to clean up the street frontage, return it back to the prevailing character that was already existing in a lot of these historic neighborhoods. So the Elias is actually a side-loaded duplex. There's a unit in the front, There's a garage in the middle, and there's a unit on the back side. The Glen is an alley-loaded or rear-loaded single-family home. And actually, these are actually kind of a combination of the Glen and the Brady. There's kind of an alternating pattern there. The Bluebird, again, it's not called the Bluebird because the structures are blue. Apparently, this was taken right before we got the snow towards the end of January, and I guess the painter came out and put some sort of sealant on the outside of it to protect it, since we were going to get all that cold weather. So that is not what they look like today. I just didn't have a chance to go out and get a current photo. So, but again, those are duplexes. Those are side by side with a rear-loaded garage. And just a few more here. The Liam, another single-family structure with a side-loaded alley-accessed garage. And then the flex house there, again, we showed the previous version, which is the 1/1 duplex variant. That's the single-family variant. And then the custom, I always include this one because it was a little bit of a unique project, but I know there's been a lot of talks about short-term rentals in the Kansas City area, especially in advance of the World Cup. And so the interesting thing about this one is it's actually two pattern plans, two pre-approved plans that the developer sandwiched together. And so we created basically one unit on one side, and there's actually an apartment above the double-car garage. And in doing so, this thing just, I mean, it's flying off the shelves, so to speak. Everybody wants one for short-term rentals. In fact, the developer that actually built this particular one sold his 4,000 square foot home on the golf course, moved into that unit, the larger unit there, and actually turned in the unit over the garage into an Airbnb and was making over $5,000 a month just in Airbnb. So it's definitely a popular thing. It's definitely a popular plan. But that's just a brief snapshot of basically what we've got. It's not everything. We have over 20 structures. In fact, in the last 4 months, I was telling Matthew before we got up to speak, we have doubled the amount of constructed units in Claremore just in the last 4 months. And we've got even more in the pipeline. We've got over 27 that are proposed that should be coming out of the ground here in the next 6 months. So definitely a very active program for sure. And then there's my contact information if anybody would like to reach out.